So hey there, this is Renessa Boley Layne, and I want to welcome you to another conversation on creating your perfect work. If you follow me, then you know it is my absolute life's mission and passion to equip you to discover, design, and get highly paid to do work you love. Whether that means radically changing careers, launching a business, or bringing your big idea to life. I would like to say delighted, but that's not even the word. I'm just so excited about the conversation today. I'm excited for how deep it gets to be. I'm just excited for how personal it gets to become. But I don't have a better word to describe than excited. But today's topic is on how to redesign your success through grief, loss, and major change. And the title itself sounds heavy, but in my perspective, the topic is so liberating. And so that is why I am so fired up about it. But here's why we're having this conversation today. I firmly believe that, redesigning your success to create work you love is not just about the interplay of talent and network and drive and vision and all of that. In fact, those elements are secondary to your level of resilience, especially when all hell breaks loose on life's plan A. And so we're going to talk about grief. We're going to talk about loss. We're going to talk about change. And we're going to talk about the myth of the superwoman, like this idea that you've got to do it all and be it all by yourself. And my hope is that no matter where you are in the perfect work spectrum, that you'll walk away profoundly refreshed by a new perspective on how you redesign your success. And so this beautiful, just exquisite and regal woman that is sharing the screen with me is Clarke. And Caroline is the Chief Brand Officer for Black Enterprises Women of Power. She's an award-winning journalist and author who has experience in print and in digital and television. And at Black Enterprise, she's held all kinds of roles from general manager to editor at large for the Black Enterprise magazine to editorial director for Black Enterprise Books. She is currently the host of Women of Power TV. And she's the editorial director of the Women of Power Summit. And so the woman is amazing. Her summit, with more than 1,000 registrants each year, is the host of blue chip sponsors. It's the largest annual conference targeting women of color executives. So that's her street cred, okay? But let me tell you why I'm so delighted to have you, Caroline, here as my guest. And as I've shared, in other conversations, part of why we're doing this series is because I want to bring organizations that I believe are a force for good that you need to know about, that you may not know about. And I want to bring them to the forefront so that you get visibility of who you can follow, where you can go, where you can congregate to really catapult your success. And so the Women of Power Summit is one of those conferences that I think just everybody needs to know about. And so I reached out to Caroline cold because I had no contacts to her or anything like that. But I got to say, by the end of our initial conversation, I was all sorts of warm and fuzzy. And as we talked about possible angles for this interview, Caroline went to the heart of things. Like, she offered up this topic on grief and loss and change and how that impacts how you succeed, because we don't talk about that as women. Like, we don't express our pain. We don't talk about our loss. We don't talk about how change is impacting us. We don't talk about the overwhelm. We don't talk about feeling lost, feeling out of control, and what we do about that. And I gotta say, it was the most refreshing conversation that I've had with a complete stranger in a long time. So I know that she is going to bless you, and you will feel as warm and fuzzy as I did. And so with that, I just want to thank you for sharing this time with us. Thank you for being willing to grace us with your expertise, and thank you for being our friend in this series. So with that, Caroline, I just want to welcome you.
Oh, Renessa, thank you so much. I really appreciate your inviting me to do this.
Yay. What I'm curious about, when we first had our conversation, you told me a story about a friend that had lost everything in a fire. And that actually became the catalyst of why we decided to do this conversation on grief and loss and change and all of that. Can you share that story with the audience and why that experience resonated so deeply with you?
Yeah, 2020 has been for all of us an unprecedented year, an incredible year for many of us, particularly in this country, starting in March. But in January, my oldest friend had a fire in her home, and she was awakened by her father in the middle of the night, and she raced to his room, and there was a fire, and she struggled. He was incapacitated. She was a caregiver. She had given up her business at the time to be with her father full time. She struggled to physically get him out of his room. She got to her phone. She called the fire department. They were able to get out of the apartment alive, but her father did not survive the night, and she lost her pets in that fire, and the fire consumed the home. It was, you know, the pictures, when I saw the pictures, I just couldn't believe that anyone had survived, because it was completely decimated. And, you know, it was sort of the beginning of the year, and it's that time when everybody's focused on, you know, their goals for the year and resolutions, and here's what I'm going to get done, and here's what I'm going to be better this year. And I was losing sleep at the time. You know, I was stressed over work. We were pretty close to the 15th Women of Power Summit. We were celebrating the 15th year of Women of Power brand, and also the 50th anniversary of Black Enterprise, the company. And so, you know, there were some additional pressures and, you know, typical work stuff, right? And the minute this happened to her, my perspective became completely clear, right? What really matters? This woman, one of my oldest, dearest friends, literally lost everything. She exited that apartment in her underwear and a t-shirt with her phone in her hand.
Wow.
Her car keys were in the apartment, melted, so she couldn't go get in her car. It was winter in New York. She didn't have a coat, so they take her to the hospital, and she's shivering in the cold. You know, I mean, this was basic.
Yeah.
And I have not slept well since that night, because it snapped into focus, how unbelievably fortunate I am.
Yeah.
And we all are. And the thing about my girlfriend, now we've been friends since I was 11 years old, and Della Edwards is her name. She's an entrepreneur. Her mother started a travel agency that specialized in African tours. Before it was in vogue to go to Africa. They built this incredible business. When her mother passed away, she kept the business going. She didn't let the business go until it was clear her father was nearing the end of his life, and she decided to take a break to devote that time to him. And on our very first call about this fire, she made me laugh. She made me laugh. Now, she was crying, to be clear. She was devastated. She was in shock. All of those things. But she made me laugh. And she laughed at something I said. And in that second, I thought, if she can laugh in this moment, then we can do anything. Then she can clearly do anything. But any of us can do anything. So since that day, you know, she has been very deliberate about trying to salvage whatever she could from that fire. Everybody else was saying, it's gone, let it go. There's nothing there. Whatever's there, it's been damaged, it's been melted, it's been charred, it smells, it's dirty, it's never going to get clean. She was determined to go back again and again and again, and to force the fire marshals to let her in, and to force family to go with her and bring bins. And she found her grandmother's china untouched, pristine.
Oh, wow.
She found her mother's heirloom jewelry, safe, untouched, you know. So she really found treasure in that place that was spared, that she clearly was meant to have, but that would have been lost if she didn't go back for it. And she is now rebuilding her life with what she was able to salvage from that fire. And to me, you know, it's a metaphor for what we all have to do at some point. We all have fires in our lives at different times. And the question is, you know, it's not just about resilience. And can you survive it, and can you bounce back? It's about what are you able to salvage?
Yeah.
What are you able to carry with you to use as the building block for where you're going to keep going?
I love the story, and I loved it when I first heard it, and I hear it differently even this time because you actually gave a whole lot more detail around it. But when we think about redesigning our success, and you just said it in some form, we salvage what we can from the fires of life, right? And those fires can look different. Like hers was a physical fire, but we've got fires of the end of a relationship, someone that we thought we were spending the rest of our life with, and we're not, either because of death or just because of breakup or job
Right.
loss or some kind of traumatic experience that we have that changes fundamentally who we are. A new direction, a pivot, a layoff, something changes, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so for you in your life, what has been a fire of life that you've had, and what did you salvage that then transformed who you became moving forward?
There have been many. I think most pivotally for me, um, I've lost a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the things we said we would talk about today is grief, because grief is something I just don't think we give its due anymore. There used to be lots of traditions around grief, and things that would signify to other people that you were in mourning. You wore black for a certain amount of time, or some cultures, they cover mirrors or they hang things on the door so that you're aware. It's a signal to the world. These people are moving through this moment, and you have to give them time, and you have to give them care, and you have to give them distance. We don't do that anymore. We schedule funerals around people's work schedules now.
Yeah.
And things like that. So, and particularly now, this year, right, as we move through the pandemic, so many people have not even had the most fundamental rituals that we have around grief. So, for me, the fires have been grief. In 2015, I lost my mother. And within a couple of months, I lost 2 uncles. By the end of that year, up until New Year's Eve, I lost an aunt. I had to plan so many funerals that I had an aunt come to me and say, I'm her executor. She's alive, thank God. But she had always said she didn't want a funeral. She didn't want anything. She's like, throw me a party and cremate me and just call it a day, right? She came to me after my uncle's funeral, hand to God, and said, you planned the most wonderful funerals. I think I want one now.
Oh!
And I was like, has this become my life? Is this who I am now? And so really, it was a moment for me. And I looked at her and I said, listen, it's not going to happen. Like, it's just not. I'm telling you, if that's what you want, you got to call another cousin, because I can't do it. I'm not doing it. But it was a moment of me to kind of look at my life and say, I felt like my life had become guided by all the things I couldn't control.
Okay.
Before my mother died, she was homebound for a few years, and so it was managing her care. And I still had children at home, and they were, readying to apply to college, and so you're juggling job and her care and getting the kids launched, and helping other kids, their friends, with essays and applications, and doing all that thing that we do. But I felt in that moment like I cannot allow my life to be dictated by all the things I cannot control.
Mm-hmm.
I have to take control of something.
Yeah.
So I moved 3,000 miles to California, kind of on a lark.
Yeah.
I got my job because I really, honestly, I love my job. And also in that moment, I couldn't handle that kind of a change. I knew the job. I had the job. I was valued in the job. But I upset the apple cart of my daily life and moved 3,000 miles away. And it was a very uncharacteristic thing for me to do. I'm very much sort of a planted, kind of a predictable. It was a radical left for me, and I needed to know if I could do it, that I could do it. I needed a change of place. I needed to heal. And in hindsight, I needed to heal much more than I even realized at the time. I was not okay.
Wow.
I was not. Nobody saw it. Nobody knew it. Job got done. Kids were fine. Life was fine. House looked fine. You know, that veneer
Yeah.
of perfection and seeming okay, but I was not. So that was a fire. It was a huge fire. And I had to really drill down on who I was if I wasn't a daughter anymore. Well, you're a daughter before you're anything, right? If you're born a woman, you're born a girl child before you're anything. Student, mother, wife, sister, you're a daughter. And that disconnect was really a tough one for me to navigate. Who am I now?
I think it's powerful because you're right. There isn't a lot of things to unpack in what you said, but there's not a lot of care that we give to those seasons and those moments in our life where we're grieving, where we've lost, where we're disillusioned, where we need time and space. You know, I have a girlfriend, a dear friend, and her mother passed as well, and she had been ill. And she was ill for a short period of time, meaning a few months, but she was traveling back and forth, you know, from her home to, you know, to her mom's and going back. And with a demanding job and a really toxic boss situation. And so she's trying to, and nobody on the job knew that her mom was sick. And so she's going back and forth and all of this. And then her mom passes away, which was not wholly unexpected, but she lived longer than was expected. And like you said, they scheduled she had her funeral and this and that. And it was like on a Thursday, by Monday, she was back on the job because, you know, got to get stuff done, you know. Right. And up until this point, there hasn't been, like she hasn't had that time to really break down and grieve and reconcile the complicated relationship that was, you know, like there's all this stuff that's going on, and yet you're supposed to perform. And you're supposed to show up and you're supposed to deliver because you got to perform, right? Yeah. And at some point something breaks. And so for you to be able to say, I wasn't okay, and to see that and know that and be willing to do something about that is important. But as you talk about salvaging, the question for us becomes, what can I take back? What do I want to take back? Like, whether it's identity, like now I'm not a daughter in the physical sense. Well, who am I and who do I want to be, and what's that new identity, and what do I need to do in order to be able to take hold of that? What can I control that I want to control? Because there are things you want to leave behind, and we'll talk a little bit about what you let burn, you know, in a moment. But for us, it's about taking that step back and saying, what do I want to reclaim? You know, what is important to me, and am I willing to do the work and take the effort, like your friend, like, man, I'm going back to the house, I'm going to get the bin, talking to the fire, I'm going to claim what I feel is valuable. And I think sometimes we need permission to reclaim what's important to us, because what's valuable to me might not be valuable to you. What I want to keep, you might think is completely immaterial. But having the courage to be like, no, that's what I'm going to salvage from the fire. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. And that's where the redesign piece is, right? Yeah. You talk about redesigning your life, your career, so that you can get where exactly it is that you want to go. And every time one of those things happens, let's call it a fire, you know, that's off plan, right? A fire is really anything that's off plan. Nobody they're going to have a fire. You don't get married thinking your marriage is going to end. You don't have a child thinking that child is going to have a disability. You don't build a house thinking a hurricane is going to knock it down. Fire is anything that's off plan. You don't take a job thinking you'll ever get fired or passed over for the promotion that you took the job to get in the first place, right? And so I think in those moments of what you salvage, that's where you're talking about redesigning, because it's like factoring in now to the plan this thing that's totally off plan. So, okay, now I have to factor in that I'm not able to make it through every loss in the world and be a zillion% fine. I'm going to have to create room to break down, to show up differently at work, to take a little bit more time so that I will be able to show up, you know, with excellence at work, so that I will be able to represent for other women. You know, I think when you're in a role, and we're all in roles like this, where we represent something for other women.
Yeah.
There's some other woman who's watching you. She may be on your team. She may be, you know, 2 buildings over. She may be in another country watching you in meetings virtually on Zoom. She may be in your church, you know, your place of worship, and always sit 3 pews behind you. But she admires you, and she's watching you, and she's studying you, and you represent something that she wants, that she aspires to. And because she sees you, she believes that maybe she can get there. And I think we do each other a disservice when we try to fulfill whatever we think that image is. Those women need to see the cracks in your armor.
Yeah.
They need to see when you can't get there on Sunday because you needed the extra sleep. You know, they need to understand the full picture so that they're not aspiring to some unrealistic, perfect ideal, but that what they're aspiring to really is attainable because it's about real life.
Yeah, yeah. We talk about the superwoman because you icked her in a little bit. And I remember you once said, I'm going to use the quote because I liked how you said it. You said, the superwoman doesn't allow us to be humble. The bravado is not real. There has to be a better way to demand that people see us as human. That strong Black woman mentality is killing us. And while there's lots of listeners on here who are Black women who are like, yep, totally get it, totally get it. There's all kinds of women who are listening in from all over the world, and they get it too. And they're struggling with that same thing. So the question becomes, well, what's ailing the superwoman? And how can we take better care of her? How do we allow her to take off her cape or clean her cape or do whatever it is so that she can go out and continue to contribute to the world in meaningful ways? But where does that come from? How do we fix it? How do we care for ourselves in ways that allow us to be human?
Yeah, I'm glad you wrote that down. I'm glad I said that. Who knew? You know, I mean, the superwoman, it's tied up in the perfection thing, right? I don't believe in the cape. I don't, it's exhausting. It's not real. Superheroes are not real. In the sense that we've created them. I think it sounds cliche, it sounds pat, but you know, I think you can be a superhero in your most broken moment. My girlfriend, Cindy Indella, she was absolutely a superhero to me in her most broken moment, because as broken as she was, you know, she was able to capture a pinprick of joy and laugh. And that is a signal that she was going to be okay.
Yeah.
Now, it was going to take time. It is taking time. You know, she was in shock in that moment. The trauma sometimes comes later. You don't always feel the fire when you're in the midst of the fire. Ask her, you know, she won't tell you that she felt the heat. She won't tell you that she was choking from the smoke, all of which will happen because her body was so engaged in getting out, right? So you don't always feel what's happening in the moment.
Yeah.
It can hit you later. And I think, you know, it is heroic to rise to the regular challenges that life throws at us every day. And I think giving ourselves permission to own whatever those challenges are in our lives, really own them, you know, like be able to tell your team or your boss when, you know what, I am going to need to take the afternoon because I'm trying to juggle all these things and I simply cannot make it happen.
Yeah.
I cannot do it. It's physically impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Or to give, to give someone who's working for you the ability to do that,
Mm-hmm.
to open that door to say, this is real life and stuff happens. And yes, we have important jobs to do, but as long as those jobs get done, the
Yeah.
way we go about doing them has to allow for the very real things that we are facing every day.
Yeah.
And I think when you do that, you get such better work product from people. They feel seen,
Yeah.
they feel validated,
Mm-hmm.
they feel understood.
Yeah.
These are the things, that we can all connect over, regardless of our backgrounds. Everyone gets hit with illnesses. Everyone gets hit with caregiving duties. Everyone gets hit with, stressors that they didn't see coming.
Yeah.
And seeing those things is how you see people. It's not just about seeing all the great things they
Yeah.
bring to the table. That's important too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's seeing what are the things that they are having to navigate and manage within all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because those are likely the things that they care a tremendous deal about.
Yeah.
And maybe they're hiding them. And
Yeah.
they need to know, you don't need to hide that to show up here and still be valued and still be seen for all the good that you do. They don't diminish in any way who you are or what you bring to the table.
Exactly.
In fact, maybe they really enhance it, right?
Yeah.
Because if you can handle that and this,
Yeah.
even imperfectly,
Yeah.
then I want you here on my team all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We just don't do that.
We don't.
I think we used to do it more. I think we do it less and less and less as we aspire to these sort of social media fabrications of bossness, and badassness. And, look, I don't have an issue with bravado. I think it's fun. I think it's cool. I think, we all have those moments, and you absolutely want to exude confidence. It matters.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be able to harness humility. You just do. If you can't, something is wrong. Something's lacking in your leadership.
Yeah. No. There are a few things that I appreciate from all that you said. But I think that the thing that stands out most is this recognition that there is heroism in the mundane. And I think as women, and I'm learning that more and more, particularly being an older mom. And we were talking about this off camera. So we're at opposite ends of the spectrum. I've got a 2-year-old and her kids are gone and grown and stuff. But as I'm in my 40s, and I did not have an appreciation for all that is required of motherhood. We were talking about sleeping, and I was like, there was a lady said I would never sleep the same again. And she was like, yeah, she broke you. You're broken. And there are days that I sit back and I marvel at what I have accomplished with this kid, like just the basics of you actually got up, got dressed, got your teeth brushed, you're eating spinach, you're off to, like, there's little things that are so, you're saying your ABCs and you're counting in Spanish, like, yes, mom, you did something. And it's the most, I'm not getting a ribbon for it or anything like that, but it was Herculean. And you're making sure your husband's got what he needs, or your spouse, or this or that. It's Herculean. And I literally had to go back to girlfriends of mine and apologize, not because I did them wrong, but because I was like, I am so sorry. I was not here for you in all the ways that I needed to have been here. Like, I didn't know, And so it's not about motherhood necessarily, because there's lots of people listening that are not mothers, but there are things that we do in our lives, both in the work and outside of that, that are pretty remarkable. And if we don't understand how remarkable that is, then we start to undervalue anything that doesn't have a revenue, a salary, a number, a bottom line, or a profit attached, a profit number attached to it. And that really does a disservice. Yeah. And so this idea of being able to be the superhero in the broken moments, I can't say how many times, like, you send emails out to people that follow you or this or that. And inevitably, it's the ones that are about the broken moments that get the most response. It's the ones where there's a vulnerability and there's an ask and there's a request that you get the most support. And so for folks that are listening in, you have your own needs, you have your own fires. We don't know what those are, but do know that you are most powerful when going through the fire. You're most powerful when asking for help. You're most powerful when letting people in. You're most powerful in your vulnerability, because people can amass a tremendous amount of respect for you, and the grace with which you are going through whatever that fire happens to be. And there will be haters, and there will be detractors, and there will be oppressors, and there will be all of that too. But even in the midst of being able to shoulder that with grace, there are onlookers who are like, wow, she handled that with such class. You know what I mean? There's just power in that. There's just power in that. And as leaders, being able to give your team and your staff and your people the permission to handle life in the ways that they need to is really, really powerful. The other thing I think is that I think we go into it, like whether it's usually in careers, but we build this currency when we come into a job. Like you go in and you're trying to deliver and you're trying to, to make sure you're seen as, confident and someone who's gonna, all of that. And what I think a lot of women fail to do is that you have built relationship capital. You have built, a reputation. That's currency, right? People know you're going to deliver. They know that if you've got the ball, you're going to run with it. And what we don't realize is that a year, 2, 3 down the road, we don't tap into that currency. We don't use it to be able to work remotely if that's what we need to do. We don't use it to be able to get flexibility if that's what we need. Like we're continuing to try to build the currency, not recognizing that we've already got a bank from which we can withdraw to make sure that we're taking care of the superhero.
Right. Well, and it's happening now, right? Because I think remote work having been forced upon us has given, it's been a wake-up call, right? Regardless of what your function is, regardless of your industry, it's just been a wake-up call. We have had to figure out how to make it work. And in most cases, we have. And I think it's been a wake-up call to corporations far and wide, to leaders, to people at every level, that we really are in a place now where work itself is truly, it's not being reimagined, it has been redirected. And the degree to which we go back, everybody's like, when are we getting back to normal? There's no back to normal. There's clearly going to be a new normal, and it is going to encompass a lot of different ways to work. And a lot of that is going to be more remote, which does give us more flexibility. That is baked in. I think we have to be really careful because it gives us more flexibility. But, I don't know about you, I'm finding there's enormous difficulty drawing boundaries. And remote work has largely become overwork and nonstop work and 7-day a week work and, 24-hour-a-day work. And you're sending emails at 5 a.m. and you're receiving them at 10 at night. And, and there is no great big corporation in the sky that is setting the etiquette book for the
boundaries.
And so that is going to be an evolving thing where I think women are really going to have to step up and take the lead. Draw those boundaries and to be very intentional about what we need and what works for us and what works against us. And to be clear, remote work, while it is a gift in many ways, there are aspects of it that if we don't really pay attention and get a grasp on it, that really work very much against us.
And you'll be in another fire, a different kind of fire.
We're building a fire, right? We're like stoking it. We're putting paper
inland, wood.
We're blowing on
charcoal, lighter fluid.
Exactly. And we have to be careful because you can really be unaware in your, trying to prove yourself. Like, yes, I'm home, but I'm in it and I'm doing it and I'm not giving up and I'm all hours and I'm 1,000%. the proving yourself piece,
Yeah.
particularly depending on who you're proving yourself to,
Yeah.
can get out of hand.
Yeah.
And so particularly when you work remotely, yes, you have to show up, and you have to show up differently, and you have to show your value and your worth, but you cannot lose sight of what you need to be healthy and strong, and of what it really takes to prove who you are and what you bring. Because a lot of us are really overarching in ways
Overdoing it. Yeah.
that are, that are
Yep.
dangerous, that we're setting a bar that's not sustainable.
Exactly.
At least not in a healthy way
Mm-hmm.
for us, and ultimately for the corporations, for our teams, etc., because it's just unrealistic.
Yep. Absolutely. I want to make this point because we talked about fires, and when we think about fires, sometimes you think of the traumatic thing. There was a death, there was this, there was that. But fires can be chronic. They can be dull, chronic oppression, long drawn out toxic relationships that should have been cut off years ago, and you're still wrestling with family and people and old friends and all that kind of stuff. Persistent doubt and insecurity and issues of self-worth and esteem that may have plagued you across the years, all these things become fires as well. And especially as you're thinking about redesigning your success, you can achieve to the heights, but if you've got an issue of self-worth, it doesn't matter what we achieve, it's never enough. I've always got to prove. It doesn't matter how much salary I have or how much revenue my company generates. It's still me trying to prove that I'm enough for something, right? And so these are fires that you get to also decide, what do I need to salvage from this?
Yep.
What do I want to take away in order to be able to get more of what I really want, to create work that I love, to create a life that really works for me, in all its imperfection, that it's perfect for me, right? So that kind of leads us into this idea of burning, and what do we let burn, right? And I thought about, because I love the visual of just the whole fire and this and that. And parenting can be all consuming, work can be all consuming, marriage can be all, like, there's all these things that we have that we consume. And at some point, if you really want to create more of what you love, you've got to decide, what am I going to let burn, right? Like, I'm in California. Caroline used to be in California, so she knows about wildfires here in California. And once they get going, like, it's a wrap, it's a wrap. But firefighters will oftentimes intentionally start a fire. What they call it, like a controlled burn. Controlled burn. They'll start a fire in order to be able to extinguish a wildfire that is going out of control.
Right.
And so I'd love to talk about that concept with you, because I think for a lot of women, as they're looking to create their ideal work, their whatever, there are things in life that you might have to let burn. There's situations and people and circumstances that you might have to let burn. How do you think about that concept? And because I just think it's just an interesting metaphor for what we let go of.
Yeah, it really is, especially if you think about the fact that we're living in a time where, particularly in Black culture and younger culture, we tend to equate fire as a positive, right? Like, oh, she's fire, right? You get that all the time. She's fire. I mean, you look great, you're doing great, you're blowing up, you're on fire, right? You're killing it.
Yeah.
But there are definitely things that have to go. And I don't know if you or any of those out there, any of my sisters out there saw or read the book Little Fires Everywhere.
Yeah.
Which Kerry Washington starred in. And Little Fires Everywhere, it centers on this notion that sometimes you have to burn something down to get pure, right? To start fresh. Like, there is no other way. You can't piecemeal it. You have to just set it on fire, and it's got to get down to the root. so that you can start again from a pure place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, and I think for most women, we spend so much time focused on building
Mm-hmm.
and creating and nurturing. We tend to be more intentionally focused on expanding things,
Mm-hmm.
growing things, right? Whether it's children, whether it's a business, whether it's relationships. And we tend to be much less intentional about looking at the landscape of our lives and saying, this bunch of trees over there is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And if I let them just stay there, they could catch fire on their own, and then you've got something out of control, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what you're talking about these controlled
Yep.
burns.
Yep.
But I think that women often, we live in a place of hope. It's like, well, they look dead.
Yes, but maybe.
They're crispy, they're brown, there's not been a leaf on one of those trees.
Some water, though.
But if I just water the crap out of it, if I pray over them, if I talk to them, I think we tend to live more in that space. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm an optimist and I'm a believer. And I think I always come from that never say die place.
Yeah.
But there is a moment, and we typically do know it when it happens if we're paying attention, where you've done all you can do,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether it's that you're pursuing a goal that just keeps getting moved back,
Yeah.
or things keep jumping in the way.
Yep.
And it's not so much about giving up, because
Mm-hmm.
I think we all push that notion off, right? Entrepreneurs eat no for breakfast.
Yep.
The only goal, that you can achieve is the goal that you stop trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So I do believe those things, but I do believe in paying attention to the signs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're really doing absolutely everything you can, and I mean everything,
Yeah.
and it's just not happening,
Yeah.
there comes a moment of reckoning where you have to stand back and say, maybe this really is not meant for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not happening because I am supposed to understand there's something better over there.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to see it if I don't, burn this down and walk away.
Yeah.
So I think that's about paying attention. And in the harried hassle of everyday life, it's hard to pay attention.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of move yourself into that framework. And I got to tell you, I don't think I did this nearly as much when I was in the midst of child rearing and caregiving to parents and jobbing and, all those things, when you're really in that storm of all the tentacles of life moving at once.
Yeah.
But as my children did become more independent, and as the demands of caregiving, my elders started to recede a bit, you do have the kind of time and space to pay more attention. And I think that's something that I wish I was aware of sooner. I wish I had heard someone, and I probably did and didn't hear it because I was too busy.
You're too busy.
Stuff. But but I wish I had understood sooner, because that's really just about intentionality. It is just about paying attention.
Yeah.
Instead of banging into the wall again and again and again and again. It's like, oh wait, okay, this wall is here. It's not dented. It's not moving. It's not cracking. It's just here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I got to find another way, or recognize I'm just not supposed to see what's on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's an important distinction, because it is about paying attention and intentionality. And sometimes we can hide behind the busyness of life, or and it's not even an intentional hide. But it becomes the excuse of looking at things head on and making a decision around, why do I have all these beeps going on? And looking at something head on and saying, what do I want out of this? Like, what do I really want? Because I do think that what you salvage and what you burn are almost two sides of the same coin. Because if I want to salvage something, if I want, talking just in the concept of redesigning your success, if I want more fulfillment in my work, and I'll use my example for me, I fast lane wrong direction in my career for 15 years, looking all successful, making good money, hating the job. If I want more fulfillment, which is the thing I want to salvage, then I might have to burn some other things. I might have to burn this identity or what I thought I was supposed to be, this whatever mogul I thought I was supposed to be at whatever time, is this engineer, whatever. I might have to burn that. I might have to burn the idea of perfection. And while I'm a big proponent of finding my perfect work, where am I supposed to be and all that, if I'm gonna do that, I've got to be willing to do that with a whole lot of mistakes, a whole lot of failures, because I gotta just get out there and I gotta explore and I've got to try and I've got to let go of, well, what are people going to think about me? Or, man, I didn't do that quite right. Or, oh, we launched and the link is broke. Like, okay, I've got to be willing to let that stuff burn in order to salvage what I said I really wanted.
And you hit on a good point, Renessa, because a lot of the times it is about having to set fire to your own idea of yourself.
Yeah.
Who you were going to be, or who your mother thought you were going to be, or who your spouse wanted you to be, who your children think you are. You know, you have to, I think what we're doing, honestly, is in our quest to become whatever we're trying to become, and to constantly redesign that notion, is really get closer and closer and closer to what we truly want, which takes time. Mm-hmm. It takes time, and it takes failure, and it takes success, and it takes input from outside, and it takes people holding you up and showing you that you have skills and talents and gifts that you don't even see for yourself, or seeing that you don't have the talents that you thought you have, or that they're just not going to get you to where you thought you were going to be. And so burning, setting fire to all those little pieces of yourself. And the other thing I think it's worth saying, when you do intentionally set fire, right? Whether it's to a relationship, personal or professional, whether it's to a job that is just not working for you, as you mentioned, for whatever reason, or a career path where, you just need to pivot because you're going down this road, and maybe it's not even you. Maybe the industry is shutting down. Opportunities are shutting down. The whole industry is changing. You're going to have to figure out another way to become the you want to become. It's scary. It's scary, right? You talk about risk. We talk all the time about risk in women and how difficult it is for some of us to risk things. What is riskier than setting fire to some facet of yourself that has always mattered to you, or something that somebody important to you planted in you years ago, that you got the degree and you got the job, and then you got there and were like, I hate this. I hate this. This is not going to be me. Right? It's scary. It is. But you have to, faith and fire, like you have to believe that, the phoenix can rise from the ashes, that you will not just survive it. You will find things to salvage that are just meant for you in this moment. And that is what you need to get to where you're supposed to be. But that process, again and again and again, we go through it. It's always upending. You always are displaced in some way by a fire. And you have to get your footing again. And you have to piece yourself back together with those things that you salvaged. And you're going to look different. And then you have to get used to that again. But that's just life. That's what it's about. And that process is heroic.
It is.
Because it's necessary, because without it, you just lie there on the ground and you don't get up. And that you just can't do. I mean, that you can't do. You might have to lie there for a minute sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's going to have to be okay, you know, but eventually it's all about forward movement.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to circle that and land that plane for folks, because I think it's an important takeaway. There's so many conversations that we'll have around redesigning your success, you know, creating work that you love, getting highly paid to do work you love, all those elements of the achievement that we want. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. I believe that there's work that's perfect for you, in all of its hot messness. There is such a thing.
That I'll take that kind of perfection.
That being said, I do believe it's a constant negotiation around, what do I want to salvage from this situation? What do I want to salvage from this performance review? What do I want to salvage from this interaction that didn't go so well? What do I want to salvage from what might have been perceived as a failure? What do I want to take from that? And then negotiating that with, what do I need to burn in order to get more of what I want? What should do I have in my mind that is a should, but not as a want, such that I'm making decisions around all the things that I should want. I should want kids, or I should not want kids, or I should, like, all these other things that still are not authentic to who we are or what we want, and all of that. What identity do I need to burn in order to be able to be more fulfilled and all of that? What are all those things that I get to let go of, so that I can salvage what? So it's a constant negotiation, and being able to be very intentional about that, because in those moments, from moment to moment, you get to decide every single day how it's going to look. Every single day, what part am I going to play? What can I control? Because that's the thing that Caroline talked about. What part of this can I control? How I can control, what part of my response can I control? What part of how much this really pisses me off can I control? Right? And so those become the things that allow you to be so much more intentional about designing the work and life that you desire, in the midst of all of the variables that you cannot control.
And helping each other design it, and helping each other salvage. You know, your girlfriend calls and needs you to help her pick through the wreckage. Even if you think there's nothing there, you show up. You know, you help her clean these things that to you look like garbage, but that are going to matter enormously to her. You know, I think that we need to help each other do that more. And you never do that selflessly. Never. You never help anybody else where it doesn't do something for you, ever. It's not possible, really. And so I never see that as a selfless thing, you know, that piece of sisterhood, that is about helping each other survive the fire, you know, be the fire, and figure out what has to go, and what should be saved. That helps all of us also redesign who we are and what success looks like for us, and who we are in the midst of that success. It's a really important piece that also sometimes gets overshadowed.
The other piece that I think is really profound is, if we know that we are consistently salvaging and burning and going through the fire and all of that, then we have so much more grace on the next woman, because we know that they are salvaging and burning and going through their own fires, whether we see it or not, no matter where they are on the spectrum, how high, how low. And when you can have that kind of compassion on someone else, it removes some of the ego, some of the insecurity, some of the, you know, all of those elements that can keep people separated, and isolated. Because if I'm going through it, I know what my behind the scenes looks like. Your highlight reel might look a whole lot better, but you got some things too, right? And so,
and just remembering that there's always a fire going on somewhere. You know, there have been women who have spoken at Women of Power over the years. You know, women who have miscarried work.
Mm-hmm.
At work.
Yeah.
And nobody who walked into their office just before, when they had started to feel something, had any idea of what they were going through. I mean, we go through some profound things without anybody knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think carrying that awareness as a leader, that people are enduring lots of things during the pandemic.
Yep.
I know so many people who, in this period, where everything is stressful for everyone, in the midst of it, they've had to deal with things that, if everything were perfect, would be intensely difficult. Not just losses of people from COVID, which is horrible enough, but losses of elders who they couldn't go see because of the pandemic, having to say goodbye to a loved one via Zoom because you can't get on a plane, or having a child have an accident in the midst of this and having to deal with that. I had a friend who, her brother-in-law suddenly had a brain tumor in the midst of this. Life is all still happening in the midst of this. And so, just understanding that we're all always dealing with stuff that you have no idea of, and showing up with a little bit more compassion, a little bit more grace, leaving the openings for people to not tell you, but to be okay. For reasons, or to not be okay for reasons that you just don't know. But knowing that there's something, and just giving them that,
It allows you to not take so many things so personally as well. And so, again, that's what we get to learn. So that being said, this has been a beautiful conversation, an incredibly refreshing conversation. And I want to make sure that we have opportunities. So I want people to know about Women of Power, what you do, why it's such a special place, because there are women who are listening who need to be a part of the work that you're doing throughout the year, the conference, and all the other things that come into play. So I want you to share a little bit about what that is. Tell people as well. There's a free gift that you have offered to them, and so we want to make sure that they're able to access that. So the floor is yours.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for that. Women of Power is a 15-year-old brand. It is, as you mentioned earlier, once a year we have a summit. It's in March. It will be coming up in March. We have no idea right now what it will look like, if it will be virtual or if we will gather as we normally do. We're trying to figure out what's happening in the world like everybody else. But it's an incredibly powerful group of women, largely leaders in corporate America, and entrepreneurs and founders of businesses who come together to really shore each other up, to encourage each other, to intensify their ability to meet all of the challenges that come their way. This is a Black women's brand, and we live with an intersectionality that complicates our lives and presents barriers that we face uniquely. And this exists to help minimize those barriers, or at least help us manage them so that they don't have as much of an impact and become as much of an impediment. And it really, at the heart of it is it's about connection, because we are so often isolated in our work and what we do. And one thing that we could definitely burn down is that isolation. So Women of Power exists to help us set fire to some of that distance, so that we can really be there for each other and champion and nurture each other. The gift that we're offering is free registration at our very first Women of Power Tech Summit, which will be September 23rd and 24th virtually. And we hope you will all join. We're going to have phenomenal speakers. We'll have giveaways. We'll have lots of things that present themselves as we get closer. But, the tech industry is an industry that has not been inclusive. Their diversity and inclusion and belonging stats are abominable, especially for such a young industry that prides itself on innovation and disruption. They have not disrupted the diversity in corporate America space. And so, we're trying to fuel that engine, and we hope you'll join us there. We'll love to see you, and we'll love to know that you learned about us here. And, definitely reach out and go to the link that
Yeah.
is provided.
The link will be below. So right below this video, there's a link. Click it. Click, if only to get on the mailing list and make sure that you're able to follow the rest of their work. So if the dates don't work for you for the Women of Power Tech Summit, that's fine as well. Get on their mailing list. Be able to follow them. They do such amazing work. I don't think they can have a better spokeswoman than Caroline, but the work is awesome. And it's a tribe that you want to be a part of. And so
and we want
the only reason you do it, then name, email, and make sure that you're following them.
Absolutely. And we want you to be a part of it. So, Renessa, thank you so much for this opportunity and for being so kind, for seeing me and for seeing Women of Power, and for being you and pouring into all of us. Because it's a really phenomenal event. Very proud of you. Very, very grateful.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And so on behalf of Caroline and myself, we just want to wish you well, wish you every happiness, every success. And until next time, we'll see you again. Bye-bye.
You well.